Egyptian gods tried to kill Moon Knight, not realizing he would end up killing them all. The ancient Egyptian gods believed they were in control. To them, Mark Spector was just a broken mercenary they could use as their weapon. Khonshu brought him back from death and turned him into Moon Knight, a servant meant to carry out divine justice. The other gods thought they could judge humanity from the shadows and decide who lives and who dies, but they made one huge mistake. They thought Moon Knight would always obey. What they didn't understand is that Mark isn't just one man. Inside him are different identities, different minds, and a rage they can't fully control. As the gods start turning against him and trying to silence him, Moon Knight stops following their rules. The more they push him, the more dangerous he becomes. And before they realize what's happening, the man they tried to destroy becomes the biggest threat they've ever faced. The story begins inside a room where a man named Arthur drinks water, breaks the glass, puts the broken glass powder into his shoes, and wears them. He walks deeper into the room as if pain means nothing to him. The scene changes to Stephen Grant, who wakes up in his small London apartment. There is sand across the floor, and he unlocks his ankle restraints. He removes the tape he places on his door every night to check whether he leaves the apartment while sleepwalking. He checks on his goldfish, Gus, who only has one fin.
Keeps asking why I don't take him anywhere nice. But it's a bit hard with one fin, isn't it?
After leaving the voice message for his mother, he leaves for work. Stephen works at a museum gift shop. On the way, he hears a little girl call the Great Pyramid of Giza a rubbish dump. Stephen politely corrects her and explains ancient Egyptian history. He talks about mummification and remarks the Egyptians removed most organs but kept the heart. They believed the heart was needed for judgment in the afterlife.
All the organs would come out except for the heart.
Because they believed you needed your heart to be judged in the underworld.
However, Stephen's boss, Donna, is not impressed. She tells him he will never be promoted to tour guide because he cannot even handle his current job properly.
You're not the bloody tour guide, Stevie.
Stephen.
You're bloody useless unless you're actually doing what you're...
Stephen accepts this sadly and mentions he has a date with a colleague on Friday night, even though he does not remember asking her out. After work, Stephen talks to a street performer named Crawley. He explains that his body feels restless, which is why he tries to stay awake every night. Stephen wants to fix whatever is wrong with him.
Anyway, if I am going to have a girlfriend, can't have ankle restraints on my bed, can I? Gotta figure something out.
Back at the apartment, he listens to a meditation app and stays awake by doing puzzles and reading books about ancient Egypt and the Ennead.
Imagine being in the story you're reading. Hello, and welcome to Solving puzzles is a great way to keep your mind awake.
Just then, Stephen wakes up in a strange place. He is outside, somewhere in the field, and his jaw is badly injured. He does not know how he got there. A deep voice speaks to him and tells him to go back to sleep and surrender the body to someone named Mark.
Go back to sleep, worm.
Hello? Where are you?
Surrender the body to Mark. The idiot's in control.
Stephen becomes terrified and confused and finds a golden scarab in his pocket. Before he can understand what is happening, armed men start chasing him. Stephen runs for his life toward a small village. He sees a group of people gathering around a calm but unsettling man and tries to blend in. The man is Arthur, who speaks about creating a world like heaven on earth. He remarks they serve the goddess Ammit, who judges souls before people commit evil. Hearing this, some volunteers step forward to be judged. Arthur places his crocodile-headed cane in their hands, and a set of scales tattoo moves on his arm. A man is judged worthy.
Who would like to go next?
I must know.
Call me Arthur.
And lives while the woman is judged unworthy and dies instantly. Arthur claims the scales watch everything and decide a person's fate. Just then, he notices Stephen in the crowd. Arthur knows Stephen has the scarab and calls him a mercenary. Stephen insists he is just a worker from London.
I work at a gift shop. Get back home, back to London.
Will you return the scarab?
Suddenly, he loses control of his body. It moves on its own and refuses to give up the scarab, and Stephen blacks out. When he wakes up, he finds his hands covered in blood and several men badly injured around him. He has no memory of fighting them. Stephen panics and runs again and blacks out a second time. This time, Stephen wakes up behind the wheel of a moving van during a chase through the Alps. Gunmen are attacking him, and he has no idea how to drive in this situation. The voice tells Stephen to let Mark take over his body. He shouts in fear as the van speeds toward disaster. After that, Stephen suddenly wakes up in his bed, gasping. He looks around in panic as his restraints are still locked. The tape on the door is unbroken, and the circle of sand around the bed is untouched. Steven sighs in relief as it seems the nightmare is over. He starts his day, but something feels wrong. He checks on his goldfish, Gus, who now has 2 fins. Steven is sure Gus only had 1 fin. Feeling uneasy, he goes for his date and waits nervously. When his date does not arrive, he calls her. His date tells him he stood her up days ago.
Calling me now? I ate steak by myself, thanks. 2 days ago?
I thought we said Friday, today.
Steven becomes confused as he thought today is Friday, but her date tells him it is Sunday. After that, Steven returns to the apartment feeling upset and scared. He looks around and notices scratch marks on the floor. He also finds a loose panel in the ceiling. Inside, he discovers a key and a cell phone, and neither belongs to him. Steven turns on the phone and is shocked to see over 50 missed calls, and all of them are from a woman named Layla. As Steven looks at the phone, Layla suddenly calls him. As she speaks, she cannot believe Steven is alive. She remarks she has been trying to reach him for months.
Oh my god, you're alive.
I just found this phone in my flat and...
What's wrong with you, Mark?
Steven explains that he just found this phone and thinks Layla has the wrong person. Layla becomes furious and asks why Mark is using a British accent. Hearing this, Steven becomes confused. He asks who Mark is, but before he gets answers, Layla hangs up. A voice suddenly speaks inside Steven's head and tells him to stop digging, or he will get himself into serious trouble.
You need to stop. You're gonna get yourself in trouble.
Steven goes into the bathroom, shaken, and looks into the mirror. He notices his reflection does not move the same way he does. The reflection speaks to him, and Steven backs away in fear. The lights in the apartment begin to flicker. Objects start flying across the room violently. Steven panics and runs out of the apartment into the hallway. At the elevator, he sees a terrifying creature who slowly approaches him. Just then, out of terror, he blacks out again. After that, Steven wakes up on a crowded bus. He thinks it was another nightmare, but then he looks out the window. He sees the same terrifying creature walking down the street. He also sees Arthur sitting calmly on the bus, and just then, he realizes this is real. At the museum, Steven rushes to the security desk and begs JB the guard to lock the doors and not let anyone in. He tells him he is being followed. JB laughs it off and reminds him it is a public museum. As Steven is worried, Arthur soon appears inside the museum. He seems astonished to see Steven there. Arthur remarks he thought Stephen Grant was just an alias.
Stephen Grant was an alias. Imagine my surprise. The scarab doesn't belong to me, it belongs to her.
Steven realizes many of his colleagues are followers of Arthur as they block the exits. Steven insists he does not have Arthur's scarab, but Arthur corrects him that the scarab does not belong to him. It belongs to the Egyptian goddess Ammit. Arthur explains Ammit's purpose. Only evil people need to fear her. She judges souls before they commit evil, not after. She sees their past, present, and future. She knows what they will do. Arthur reveals Ammit wants to cleanse the world of evil, but the other Enneads betrayed her and imprisoned her. After that, Arthur grabs Steven's hands and the scales tattoo on his arm begins to move. But the scales cannot decide Steven's fate. They swing back and forth. Arthur claims there is chaos inside Steven.
There's chaos in you. Let him go.
Later, as Steven finishes his work, he is suddenly attacked by a monstrous creature. Steven runs through the museum in terror. Over the loudspeakers, Arthur warns Steven to give up the scarab or be killed. Steven hides in a men's bathroom. The creature hits at the door. Steven looks into the mirror and sees his reflection again. The reflection begs Steven to let him take control over his body. He claims he can save them if Steven stops fighting him. Steven becomes terrified and remarks this is not real, but the reflection insists it is real.
You need to give me control. Do you understand? You gotta give me control. It's the only way.
Let me save us.
With no other choice, Steven gives up control of his body. His body is suddenly covered in white ceremonial armor. A crescent moon appears on his chest, and Steven transforms into a powerful masked warrior. The creature attacks him, but Steven easily defeats the creature. He stands there, shaking, realizing his life will never be the same again. The next day, Stephen Grant wakes up from another violent nightmares. He panics and looks around his bedroom. Everything is exactly as he left it. Steven breathes slowly, unsure once again if what he experienced was real or just another dream. Later at work, JB tells Steven that several areas of the museum are closed off.
Saying we burst pipes, but
Anyone seen the security footage?
Steven becomes nervous and asks JB to let him watch the security footage from the night before. There is no sign of the monstrous creature Steven remembers fighting. JB only sees Stephen destroying property and talking to himself. However, the museum decides not to press charges, but they tell Stephen they know he has been struggling and offer to connect him with doctors for help. Stephen becomes relieved, but also humiliated. He later tells Crawley, the street performer, that he was fired for vandalism, though at least he was not arrested. Stephen thinks out loud that the key and phone he found in his apartment are real and are not imagined. If he can find what the key belongs to, he might finally prove something is really happening to him. After that, he searches London and eventually finds a storage facility that matches the key. Inside the unit, he finds a cot, emergency rations, clothes, and a duffel bag. In the bag, he discovers a passport for a man named Mark Spector,
Mark Spector.
foreign currency, a gun, and the golden scarab. Stephen becomes astonished to see it. The scarab suddenly floats and spins above its base. Stephen realizes it works like a compass, pointing towards something unknown. His reflection appears again and warns him to stop. Mark tells Stephen to lie down and take a nap while he handles things. Stephen refuses and declares he is never sleeping again. Mark explains to Stephen that he is an avatar of the Egyptian moon god Khonshu. That means Stephen is also an avatar. Their job is to protect the vulnerable and punish those who hurt them.
You're gonna go lay down on that cot back there. Sleep? I'm never gonna go to sleep again. I serve Khonshu. Avatar. Which means you are too. We protect the vulnerable.
Stephen cannot handle this information and begins to panic. He remarks he needs to go to the hospital. But Mark continues explaining that he made a deal with Khonshu, and it only works if Stephen stays out of the way. Mark promises that once the job is done, Stephen will never hear from him again. Stephen decides the best solution is to turn everything over to the police. He wants to be locked up so he cannot hurt anyone, and so Mark will be gone from his head. When Stephen runs out of the storage unit, Khonshu appears behind him and chases Stephen through the hallway, shouting for him to give the scarab back. Stephen escapes into the busy streets of London. He stumbles and falls, nearly getting hit by traffic. Just then, a woman named Layla El Fowley stops in front of him. She recognizes Stephen immediately as Mark. Stephen becomes confused, but Layla helps him and drives him to his apartment.
Found you. I tracked your phone. I thought that you were in danger or kidnapped again.
Are we married?
Look,
As they ride, Layla angrily confronts Mark and talks about the pain and uncertainty he has caused her. She reminds him that she is still his wife and asks him to drop the ridiculous British accent. Stephen has no idea what she is talking about. At the apartment, Mark appears in Stephen's reflection and warns him to get Layla out. When Layla hands Stephen the divorce papers, he insists he would never divorce her and tries to explain everything.
I don't know how to explain what's been happening.
Stephen, listen to me.
And inside
Stop.
of it...
You're gonna get her killed. You hear me?
However, Mark warns him again that Layla will be in danger. Eventually, Layla opens the duffel bag and finds the golden scarab. She becomes furious as it is the artifact they once recovered together. Stephen pleads with her, telling her that he is not Mark. He is Stephen Grant, a gift shop worker who wants nothing to do with the scarab. Layla feels hurt that he remembers none of their life together. Before they can continue, two police officers force their way into the apartment and arrest Stephen. Layla hides outside the window holding the scarab. In the police car, the officers discover Mark Spector is an international mercenary wanted for attacking a dig site in Egypt and executing a group of archaeologists.
Mark Spector was part of a team of mercenaries. Execution style.
Hearing this, Stephen realizes something is wrong. The police car does not head toward a station. Instead, it drives into a rundown neighborhood. Stephen looks around and notices something terrifying. Everyone in the area has the symbol of Amit on their arm. Watching this, Stephen begins to panic. Left alone in the car, Stephen asks for help. Inside his mind, Stephen and Mark fight for control of the body. Stephen refuses to give in and remarks he saw what Mark did in the Alps and will never hand over the body. Just then, Stephen learns the truth that the man who captured him is Arthur. Arthur now understands why Stephen's scales never balance as too many voices live inside him. Arthur asks if Khonshu chose Stephen because his mind was already broken. Stephen argues he is not broken and just needs help. Arthur calmly tells him that is exactly why he is here. Then Arthur explains his vision, claiming that he only wants what is best for the world. He tells Stephen to look around at the commune and see the peace he has created. Arthur remarks it breaks his heart how much pain exists in the world. Arthur talks about Khonshu that he has never changed. He once served him as his avatar, acting as his fist of vengeance. Without avatars, Khonshu is weak and can only cause small disturbances. Arthur reveals that Khonshu's anger and methods cause the other Enneads to banish him. Arthur explains that Khonshu only punishes people after they commit evil. To Arthur, this only treats the symptoms. Amit, however, judges people before they commit evil. She destroys evil at its source. Arthur believes this is true justice. With Amit restored and himself as her avatar, they can bring peace to the world. That is why he needs the golden scarab which leads him to Amit's tomb. Arthur speaks directly to Mark and warns him not to trust Khonshu, as Khonshu will never let Mark go. Stephen questions Amit's justice and asks if it is fair to punish people for things they have not done yet.
I am real justice.
Punishes those who have already walked an evil path.
Amit judges people pre-evil.
Stephen.
What about a child?
Arthur replies that sometimes medicine and poison are the same thing, only the dosage is different. Growing annoyed, Arthur shows Stephen his double-headed crocodile cane. He tells him Amit gave it to her first avatar, and it still holds some of her power. Just then, Layla appears inside the commune and reveals she has the scarab. She stands beside Stephen and tells him to summon the suit, but Stephen does not understand. Layla gives him the scarab and they run away. Arthur becomes furious, releases Amit's power, and summons a creature to hunt them. As they run away, Layla tells Stephen he is Mark and must summon the suit. Mark demands control of the body. Overwhelmed, Stephen begs both of them to leave him alone. Layla gently tells Stephen they can do this together. The creature enters the room, but only Stephen can see it. Stephen falls out a window and thinks he is going to die. Mid-air, Khonshu's voice demands him to summon the suit. As Stephen's eyes glow, an armor forms around him. He lands safely, now wearing a white suit and mask as he becomes Mr. Knight. But Mark complains this is not the proper armor. Stephen finds batons in his pockets instead of weapons. Amazed by his strength, Mr. Knight fights the creature and tells Layla to stay back. Layla is suddenly attacked by the invisible creature. The fight spills into the street near a bus full of people. Stephen allows Mark to take control of the body and transforms into Moon Knight with crescent blades. Mark leads the creature away and defeats it. But during the fight, the scarab is lost. A homeless man finds the scarab just as Arthur arrives. Arthur judges the man with Amit's scales and kills him as Layla watches in horror. Elsewhere, Stephen begs Mark to switch back, but Mark refuses. He promises to leave Stephen alone after one final mission. Khonshu becomes furious and claims that if Mark fails again, Khonshu will find a new avatar who will be Layla. Khonshu and Mark decide there must be another way to find Amit's tomb.
Let me remind you, should we part, you and dear as she is to you, hell do you think?
Meanwhile, Layla meets with an old family friend in Cairo. He is a skilled forger who helps her get a new Egyptian passport. Layla is worried as she does not understand what Mark is doing. Out in the desert, Arthur and his followers use the golden scarab which points the way to Amit's tomb. One of his men warns Arthur that Mark Spector is now in Cairo and tracking them. Arthur believes Amit is already with them and is not worried. Elsewhere in the city, Mark follows a lead connected to Arthur's digging crew. He runs across rooftops and suddenly, the man he is following is stabbed and killed by Arthur's men right in front of him. They all wear the symbol of Amit on their wrists. Mark attacks them without using his Moon Knight armor. He holds a knife to one man's throat. In the reflection of the blade, Stephen appears and begs Mark not to kill them. However, Mark suddenly blacks out. When he wakes up, he finds him sitting in a taxi. The driver tells him they are heading to the airport. Mark panics and jumps out when he sees the Arthur's men on the street. He chases them through a crowded market, but Mark blacks out again.
That's enough.
This time, he wakes up in a quiet part of the city, stabbing one of the attackers. When he looks around, 3 men are dead. Mark has no idea how it happened and blames Stephen for losing control. Stephen angrily responds and tells Mark to blame Khonshu instead. With no leads left, Mark asks Khonshu if any of the other Enneads will stop Arthur. Khonshu remarks asking for their help risks their anger. They could imprison him again, and Mark realizes this is true. However, Khonshu decides to force Ennead to listen.
What about the other gods? Are they just gonna...
And they'll imprison me in stone.
You have any good ideas?
In broad daylight, he uses his power to create a massive eclipse over Cairo. The sky goes dark in seconds. Mark comments that this is a bit much, and Khonshu tells him to hurry. Ennead are now gathering their avatars. Khonshu warns Mark that the last time they met, he was banished. This time, the proof against Arthur must be undeniable. A strange tunnel appears out of thin air. Mark steps inside and enters the chamber of the Ennead. He watches his reflection in the stone wall as Stephen becomes amazed. He realizes they are inside the Great Pyramids of Giza, something he always wanted to see. Mark meets Yatzil, the avatar of the goddess Hathor. She jokes that Khonshu is always dramatic. The council begins as the Enneads take control of their avatars. Horus, Isis, Tefnut, Osiris, and Hathor are present. Osiris speaks through his avatar Selim. He warns Khonshu that he was banished before for nearly exposing the Enneads to humanity. If he causes another display, they will imprison him in stone. Khonshu argues back that he was banished because he refused to abandon humanity like the others. He warns them that if they do nothing, they will lose this realm.
Manipulate the sky again, and we will imprison you in stone.
For not abandoning humanity unlike the rest of you.
Speaking through Mark, Khonshu accuses Arthur of planning to release the goddess Ammit. Ennead summons Arthur into the chamber. Arthur addresses Ennead and claims Khonshu has been obsessed with Ammit since Arthur's own time as his avatar. He points out that Mark does not even know who he is. He has records under 2 names and multiple personalities. Arthur argues that Khonshu is abusing a broken man, just as he abused Arthur himself, and urges Ennead to stop Khonshu. Horus asks Mark if he is unwell, and Mark admits that he needs help.
Take action now before it's too late.
Let us speak to Mark Spector. Are you unwell?
I am unwell.
However, Ennead decides Arthur has done no crime and sets him free. Afterward, Yatzil quietly speaks to Mark and tells him there is another way. Ammit's tomb was hidden even from Ennead. A Medjay named Senfu recorded its location. If he finds his sarcophagus, he will find Ammit's tomb. Later, in a busy market, Mark asks a street vendor about Senfu's sarcophagus. Just then, Layla suddenly appears behind Mark. Mark tells Layla she should not even be here, but Layla brushes it off. She remarks she has upset people before and survived and promises to help him find what he needs. After that, Mark and Layla travel by a boat along the river to the mansion of Anton Mogart. During the ride, Layla tells Mark she is not here for him. She is here to stop Arthur and save lives. As music and dancing fill the boat, Mark remembers their wedding night. He feels the connection, but pushes Layla away again, refusing to open up.
Maybe.
Okay.
Finally, they arrive at Mogart's large mansion, and Anton Mogart asks why they are here and why they are interested in Senfu. However, he gives them permission to see if, but only for 1 minute. Layla asks Mark to let Stephen take control, but Mark refuses. Layla examines Senfu's sarcophagus but cannot find any clear markings. Stephen appears in a reflection and explains the writing is coded. Mark listens, and Stephen tells him to fold and rearrange the cartonnage. When Mark does this, a hidden star map appears. Before they can finish, Mogart's men turn on them for damaging the sarcophagus. Just before violence breaks out, Arthur shows up there. Arthur offers Mogart something better than clues and reveals the golden scarab. He claims there is no need for a map when they can have the treasure itself. Arthur calmly speaks to everyone and tells Layla that distance cannot heal the wound of her father's murder. He tells Mark that he hides the truth from Layla because he feels unworthy of love. Arthur then lifts his cane and proves the Enneads are real. He unleashes power that destroys the sarcophagus. Khonshu orders Mark to summon the suit. Mark transforms into Moon Knight and attacks Mogart's men. As Layla gathers pieces of the broken cartonnage, Stephen briefly takes control as Mr. Knight tries to stop the violence, but he is quickly overwhelmed and injured. However, Mark takes back control and saves Layla. They escape and drive into the desert. Layla asks Mark what Arthur meant, but Mark dismisses it as lies. They drive in silence, unaware they are being followed. In the desert, they try to rebuild the star map. Now, Stephen takes control, rebuilds the map, and explains how ancient Egyptians used stars to navigate. Stephen and Layla realize the stars have shifted over time, making the map incomplete. Khonshu watches the sky and remembers the night the map was made. He turns back the night sky, rotating the stars. He warns Stephen this act will cost him his freedom, however, Stephen agrees. The sky changes dramatically as ancient stars move into place. Arthur watches from afar and feels pity for Khonshu.
You brought this upon yourself, Khonshu.
In the chamber of the Enneads, Ennead takes action and imprisons Khonshu in stone. As Layla locks in the coordinates, Khonshu is sealed inside an Ushabti. Stephen's suit disappears, and he collapses. Arthur later speaks to Osiris's avatar and confirms Khonshu's fate. Arthur approaches the Ushabti and admits he enjoyed serving Khonshu, but now he will finish what Khonshu never could.
I'm going to do what you could not.
Selim, the avatar of Osiris, places Khonshu's Ushabti inside a gallery in the chamber of the Enneads. The statue is sealed away, leaving Khonshu trapped. Out in the desert, Layla struggles to wake Stephen Grant. Stephen collapses after completing the impossible task of finding the starry map. However, Arthur's armed men come there. Layla tries to drag Stephen, but his body is too heavy. Nightfall becomes their only protection as Layla pushes Stephen over the edge of a sand dune, hiding him from view. Thinking quickly, Layla throws a flare onto the back of the Arthur's disciple's truck. The flare lands on a crate of ammunition, and the truck explodes in flames. Stephen stands up to his feet and watches in shock at the destruction Layla causes. After that, they escape in their battered jeep and follow the coordinates to Amit's tomb, hoping Arthur has not arrived first. As they drive, Layla sees Mark in the reflection of the side mirror. Layla and Mark agree that when they face Arthur, Mark should be the one in control, but Stephen immediately refuses and tells Mark about their deal. When Stephen is done with Khonshu, Mark is supposed to disappear forever. Mark argues the deal never included letting Layla die. Layla turns to Stephen, hurt and confused. She asks why she never knew about a deal that would erase Mark from her life. Stephen awkwardly responds that Mark already disappeared from her life once. Layla decides she will not let Mark handle this alone. From now on, it is just Layla and Stephen. Finally, they reach Arthur's abandoned dig site above ground and gather important things. They need another way into Amit's tomb before Arthur returns. Mark again asks Stephen to give up control, but Stephen refuses. He remarks they share the same body, so he can do this too. Mark reminds him he is not alone. Stephen shuts him down and claims he has Layla. Mark angrily asks if Stephen loves his wife, and Stephen walks away without answering.
Here, you're not alone.
I know I'm not alone. Not alone, I've got Layla.
Are you in love with my wife?
I'll
call you.
off a cliff!
While they prepare their ropes, Stephen tells Layla this is the adventure he has dreamed about his entire life. Layla smiles, understanding the feeling of chasing something you never had. As they share a quiet, intimate moment, Stephen confesses the truth. He tells Layla that Mark pushed her away to protect her from Khonshu, who wanted her as his next avatar. They become close and ready to kiss each other. After that, Layla jumps into the pit first, and Stephen watches her with awe. Suddenly, Mark briefly takes control and punches Stephen, knocking him into the pit. Inside the tomb, Stephen watches in wonder as two large marble sphinxes guard the entrance. He notices initials carved in the sand. Layla explains they belong to her father, an archaeologist who died chasing his dream. Stephen comforts her, saying her father would be proud to see her proving the Enneads are real. They reach a chamber with 6 different paths. Stephen realizes the layout matches the Eye of Horus, a symbol of protection and the afterlife.
Right, so the Eye of Horus is also representing the 6 senses, 6 points.
They deduce Amit's last avatar was a pharaoh. Each path represents a sense, so they follow the path of the tongue, the voice of the avatar. Inside, they find a room, and Layla believes the murals show Heka priests, ancient sorcerers entombed to protect the pharaoh. Stephen watches fresh blood on the slab. Layla notices bloody jars and tools. Bones and blood cover the floor. Stephen climbs to a higher level and finds more jars and a skeletal hand wrapped in snakeskin. Just then, a Heka priest drags an injured disciple onto the slab and begins harvesting his organs. Layla accidentally knocks over a jar and the creature attacks. Layla distracts it, and Stephen tells her to run. Stephen pushes the lab off the ledge, believing he kills the creature, and escapes through the upper exit. Layla is now alone in a dark chamber, separated from Stephen. She moves carefully along the edge of the cavern, unsure if the Heka priest is nearby. Landing on a wider ledge, a Heka priest emerges and grabs Layla, tries to pull her into the darkness. She resists, but is knocked onto her back. The creature won't let go until Layla plunges a lit flare into its skull, pushing it over the edge. Layla screams in frustration as Arthur watches her from across the chamber. Meanwhile, Stephen finds himself in a grand tomb fit for a pharaoh.
Tomb fit for a pharaoh. Oh, it's got to be one of the big uns.
In the center lies a golden sarcophagus surrounded by a pool of water. Looking into the pool, Stephen sees Mark's reflection. Mark remarks he is astonished Stephen kissed Layla and told her the truth about why he pushed her away. But Stephen is distracted and notices inscriptions on the sarcophagus and realizes he is standing in Alexander the Great's lost tomb. Arthur speaks to Layla from across the chamber. He tells her that her father would be proud that she proved Egyptian Enneads walk among us. He shows her a cane, Amit's gift to her previous avatar, explaining he has read Mark's scales. He has endured more pain than anyone should. Arthur claims Layla's father was murdered by mercenaries, but she refuses to believe he implies Mark was involved. Back in Alexander's tomb, Stephen opens the golden sarcophagus. If Alexander is the voice of Amit, then the Ushabti should be hidden in his throat. Carefully, Stephen removes the bandages and finds Amit's Ushabti. Just then, Layla enters, and Steven excitedly shows her the small statue. Layla, still furious, demands to speak to Mark. Therefore, Mark takes over the body. Layla asks if he killed her father. Mark explains that he did not, but he was there. His partner became greedy and killed everyone at the dig site. Mark could not stop him, and would have died too if he hadn't made a deal with Khonshu. After that, Arthur and his disciples enter the chamber. They find only Mark as Layla hides holding the scarab. Arthur reminds Mark of the first morning without Khonshu in his head. When he felt free, Mark fights back, killing 2 of Arthur's men, but Arthur shoots him twice. Mark collapses in a pool of water as Layla watches in horror.
Can't save anyone who won't save themselves.
The scene changes to a television screen at Putnam Psychiatric Hospital showing a movie named Tomb Buster with Dr. Stephen Grant as the protagonist. Mark wakes up, struggles out of his wheelchair, and finds himself in Arthur's office. Arthur remarks on Mark's difficulty separating reality from his imagination. Mark realizes that he was sedated. He runs toward the door but is caught by 2 men. But Mark breaks free, runs down a ward hallway, and hides in a dark room. Inside, he finds a sarcophagus and a voice pleads to be let out. Mark opens it and finds Steven trapped inside. They hug and feel relieved, still unsure how they are both there.
How is this possible?
I don't know. Last thing that you remember. Arrow shot us.
Yes!
As they make their way down the hall, they notice another sarcophagus. Moving forward cautiously, Mark and Steven are confronted by another god, Towerette. After that, Mark Spector wakes up in Dr. Arthur's office. Arthur tries to calm him, saying he didn't shoot him. He explains that Mark's mind travels between reality and imagination to survive. Arthur calls Mark a patient who refuses to face his inner self. Carefully, he wants to talk about young Mark, but Mark gets angry, and Arthur triggers a security alarm. 2 men arrive and sedate Mark to stop him from losing control. Back in the Egyptian hospital hallway, Towerette tells Mark and Steven that they are dead. They are in the Duat, a realm of the afterlife. Steven is amazed to meet her, but Mark refuses to believe it's real. Towerette explains that this is just one of many planes of consciousness, like the ancestral plane. Mark gets frustrated and leaves through a doorway, but he finds himself on Towerette's huge boat in the underworld desert. Towerette takes their hearts and places them on the scales of justice. The scales weigh hearts against the feather of truth. In ancient Egyptian belief, the heart shows the true self. Balanced scales welcome the soul to the field of reeds, while unbalanced scales trap the soul in the Duat, frozen in sand forever.
Truth. Balance your scales before we arrive, your souls will be destroyed.
Mark refuses to follow the rules and remarks they should kill Towerette and steal the boat. Towerette notices their scales moving wildly. She explains that neither heart is full, both feel incomplete. Without balance, the Duat will claim their souls. She urges them to face their hidden truths to survive. On the boat, Steven ignores Mark and approaches a doorway. He watches the moment he lets Mark as Moon Knight take over to fight the monster in the museum. Another doorway shows Steven remembering their recent starry map search across 1,000 Egyptian nights. Through another doorway, Steven watches Mark refuse to revisit his memories. Then they hear a child's cry for help. Steven runs down the hall, and Mark follows him. They enter a cafeteria full of dead bodies.
Killed all of them? Murderers, predators, the worst of the worst. You tried taking a life.
Steven notices their scales moving. Mark explains that each person was a criminal punished under Khonshu's guidance. When Mark admits killing weighs on him, Steven watches the scales balance. In the corner, Steven watches young Mark. Mark begs him not to go near, but Steven locks the door behind him and follows the child. Steven sees a memory of Mark's mother while his father builds a small playhouse. Young Mark teases his brother, Randall, about a goldfish drawing with one fin and asks him to explore a cave before dinner. Their parents remind Mark to watch over Randall. After that, young Mark and Randall walk through the woods pretending to be the characters of a movie named Tomb Buster. Just then, rain starts to pour. Randall reminds Mark their mother said not to enter the cave when it rains, but Mark brushes it off. However, water starts flooding the cave. Steven calls for Mark and Randall, hearing their cries. Meanwhile, Mark wanders the hallway, trying to find another memory. He sees his mother staring coldly at him through a door. Overwhelmed by Steven's voice and Randall's cries, Mark tells himself it's just a memory. A new doorway opens, and Mark is back at his childhood home. His family holds a shiva for Randall. Mark watches Steven miserable and drenched in the room. His mother tells his father she just wants Randall back. She snaps at young Mark, blaming him for not keeping Randall safe. Mark pleads with Steven to leave the memory, but Steven watches the young Mark rush upstairs. Next, Steven watches Mark's father ask his mother to celebrate Mark's 8th birthday. His mother isn't feeling well, so just the two of them celebrate. Young Mark blows out the candles sadly. On his 12th birthday, his father makes his favorite cake. Drunk, his mother scolds him, blaming him for past loss, and young Mark runs upstairs to his room. Another memory shows young Mark going with a duffel bag while his father requests him to come back. His father promises help for his mother. Heartbroken, Mark snaps that he is supposed to fix everything. He does not understand why his father has not done anything. Mark deals with Steven as he tries to re-enter the house. Their struggle pulls them into another memory in the Egyptian desert. After that, Steven watches the aftermath of a massacre at a dig site. He remembers Arthur saying Mark was a mercenary who killed Layla's father.
What happened to you? Called for no witnesses and I couldn't live with that. Layla's dad.
Mark defends himself, explaining that going in a dissociative state gets him discharged from the military. With few options, he worked for his old commander, Bushman. Their job was to raid an Egyptian tomb, but Bushman became greedy, leaving people like Layla's father dead. Mark tried to save them but could not do anything. Next, they watch a younger Mark, mortally wounded, crawling into Khonshu's temple. Just as he is about to give up, Khonshu appears and offers him a choice: serve him and live, or die. Khonshu sees Mark's pain and broken mind and promises him a purpose. Mark agrees, pledging himself as Khonshu's warrior.
I feel the pain. I am the god Khonshu. Then rise. Rise.
He is filled with light and protected by ceremonial Moon Knight armor. Steven watches this as manipulation, realizing Khonshu has used Mark all along. The scales slow down further as Mark faces this truth. However, Mark and Steven are pulled back to the boat by a disturbance caused by the Guardians of the Dead. Taweret explains that unbalanced souls are spreading fear in the underworld because Arthur condemns them too soon. Steven begs her to help them return to Layla to free Khonshu, and Mark admits it's their only option. Taweret agrees, but warns that Osiris's gate is the only path back. She turns the boat around and tells Mark and Steven to go inside quickly. Time is running out, so they must balance their scales to survive the duat. Steven insists they go back into Mark's childhood bedroom, thinking it's the key to balancing the scales. Mark refuses, claiming reliving all the memories is not worth it. Steven warns that if they don't, Arthur is going to win, people will die, and if Layla dies, it will be on Mark. Overwhelmed, Mark shouts he can't and won't do it, falling into a narcissistic rage. Back in Arthur's office, he watches Mark and tells him to stop his self-harm. He praises him for facing his traumas and asks if he created Steven to hide from his own terrible actions or to punish the world for his mother. He advises Mark to open up to Steven.
You created Steven. Do you think Steven created Mark to punish the world? Do you know?
In the childhood bedroom, Steven remembers the room, but not this memory. As Mark's mother knocks on the door, young Mark hides. Steven takes control of Mark's body and notices a poster of the movie named Tomb Buster, realizing Mark created him. Before he can process it, Mark's mother bursts in with a belt. Mark pulls Steven out of the memory to protect him, explaining Steven was not meant to see the abuse. Steven punches Mark, realizing he is not real, but Mark's alter who was made to carry Mark's pain. Mark insists Steven got to live happily. Steven accuses Mark of rewriting history to hurt him and shuts down, demanding to be let out. Back in Arthur's office, Steven seems agitated. Arthur apologizes to him, saying it was him who told Mark to open up to Steven. He reveals it was Steven who brought them to this psychiatric hospital after his mother passed. Steven corrects him, claiming his mother hasn't passed. Arthur offers to call her, but Steven refuses. Eventually, he accepts the phone and realizes his mother is actually dead. Revisiting the first memory, Mark's father holds a shiva for his mother. Mark drinks outside from a bottle. His father asks him to come inside, but Mark refuses. Steven watches young Mark fall to his knees. In a dissociative state, Steven emerges and calls his mother, unsure how he got there. When Mark claims he could not face his father after everything he had done, Steven reassures him, saying that nothing his mother said was his fault. Mark struggles with guilt over Randall's death, but Steven tells him he was just a child and not responsible. Rushing back to Tawaret's boat, they approach the gates of Osiris. Taweret regrets telling them the gates aren't open because their scales never balanced. Unbalanced souls attack the boat. Mark tells Steven to hide and faces the threat. Steven realizes that if he is Mark, he shares his power. He fights back, saving Mark from being thrown overboard. But another soul grabs Mark, and Steven sacrifices himself, falling into the Duat's sand. With Steven's offering, the scales finally balance, and Mark feels a rush of relief and peace as he enters into the field of reeds. The scene changes to Mark Spector dead in Alexander the Great's burial chamber. Arthur and his men surround him and take Amit's golden Ushabti from Mark's pockets. He turns to his men, holding the Ushabti, and raises his double-headed cane. Some light spreads as he prepares them to heal the world. Layla quietly looks at Mark, hugs him one last time, and secretly pockets the scarab before blending in with Arthur's men. Later, at a police checkpoint, the officers question Arthur why they are on a remote road. However, Arthur demands the police show him their souls. He strikes his cane, and the light bursts from the chests of the officers. All but one officer lost their souls. Arthur remarks the remaining officer is a good man and invites him to join. As the men move the bodies, Layla follows quietly, but a voice from one of the dead stops her. Another dead body communicates too, introducing itself as Towerette. She tells Layla Mark is sending a message. She must stop Arthur.
Layla, wait. I am the goddess, Tawera. It's Mark who's telling you to stop.
Towerette warns that Arthur is too powerful for Layla alone. If Mark can return, he will need Khonshu. She tells Layla to break Khonshu's Ushabti in the chamber of the Enneads. Towerette wants Layla to be her avatar, but Layla refuses. Meanwhile, in the chamber of the Enneads, the avatars of the Enneads sense a huge disturbance. Arthur and his men invade the chamber and the walls crumble before them. Arthur invites his men in as Layla slips away. Seeing the avatars ready to fight, Arthur remarks they are just judges, not warriors. Selim attacks anyway, but Arthur raises his cane. The avatars fall and Arthur hits the Ushabti, releasing Amit. Amit asks who she should thank. Arthur humbly claims she owes him nothing. Amit places her hand on Arthur's head. His eyes lighten up, and he gains her power. Layla explores the chamber and finds the gallery of Ushabtis. She takes Khonshu's and breaks it, releasing the god. Khonshu notices Mark is gone. Layla corrects him, saying Mark died fighting. Khonshu remarks the war is not over and asks Layla to be his avatar. However, Layla refuses, blaming him for Mark's suffering. Khonshu warns her she can't defeat Arthur and Amit alone. To stop Amit, an avatar must rebind her.
I do not sense Mark Spector died fighting, no doubt.
You turned Mark's life into a wake night.
Won't win against Harrow and Amit alone.
I don't care.
Amit tells Arthur and his disciples they will purify the world's souls, starting with Cairo, but Khonshu blocks their way and tells Amit he cannot let her proceed. Meanwhile, in the field of reeds, Mark Spector enjoys peace. Towerette tells him his scales are balanced and his journey is over. But Mark keeps thinking about Stephen, who is trapped in the Duat. He wants to go back for Stephen, even though leaving the field of reeds means he can never return. Towerette insists he does not need Stephen anymore, which frustrates Mark. Refusing to abandon him, Mark turns back as the field of reeds fades. Back in the sands of the Duat, Mark watches Stephen and approaches him. He tells Stephen that it was his presence that saved him through his dark childhood. He apologizes for failing to protect him. As Mark begins to turn to sand, a miracle happens and the gates of Osiris open behind them. With light shining through, Mark and Stephen embrace. Back in the chamber of the Enneads, Amit mocks Khonshu for lacking faith. The two Enneads battle viciously, enjoying the fight.
I choose obliteration over mercy.
Amit tries to make Khonshu beg, but he refuses. Mark and Stephen pass through Osiris's gates and reawaken in Alexander the Great's burial chamber, back in their bodies. Mark is still injured, but Khonshu asks if he chooses life or death, warning that life comes with slavery. Just then, Mark's body expels the bullets, and he is enveloped in the ceremonial Moon Knight armor, healing him. Outside at the dig site, Khonshu explains that they need Mark's help to defeat Amit. Stephen also shows up as Mr. Knight, and Khonshu becomes shocked. He agrees, promising to release both of them.
You should answer my question, though.
You would negotiate now? I will release you both.
Meanwhile, Layla finds Selim injured in the chamber of the Enneads. She carries him to safety and reveals she released Khonshu. Selim explains they must imprison Amit in a mortal body, not a statue, to make her vulnerable, but they need more avatars. After that, Layla calls out to Towerette, who speaks through Selim's body. Thrilled that Layla is her temporary avatar, Towerette even shares that she met Layla's father when she visited the Field of Reeds. Outside the chamber of the Enneads, Arthur climbs the pyramid and raises his cane. Lightning strikes across the city as his disciples' eyes and tattoos glow. Using Amit's power, they start judging people, ripping souls from bodies. Meanwhile, Amit grows stronger with every soul. Amid the chaos, Layla emerges in ceremonial armor with wings as the Scarlet Scarab, now Towerette's avatar. Arthur sees a flash of white light, Moon Knight, and charges. The fight carries through the sky, with Mark and Stephen switching between Moon Knight and Mr. Knight to counter Arthur. On the other hand, Khonshu battles Ammit on a massive scale. Ammit questions why they continue this fight, as both Enneads punish evil differently. Khonshu refuses to join her, choosing to keep free will intact. Arthur and Moon Knight land in a crowded area. Before Arthur can strike, Scarlet Scarab charges in, shifting his blast with her wings and sending it back at him. Mark and Layla embrace, both shocked to see each other. Steven takes over for a moment, praising Layla for her bravery. Mr. Knight runs toward Arthur, armed with his stick weapons, taking down every Arthur's men in his path. Scarlet Scarab and Moon Knight team up, charging at Arthur to take him down together. One of Arthur's cane blasts hits a van full of civilians. Scarlet Scarab flies to save a young girl just in time, moving everyone to safety. Arthur unleashes his rage on Mark, claiming that Mark's existence ruined lives and that Ammit would have created a perfect world without him. Mark lies on the ground, part of his Moon Knight armor destroyed. In the distance, he sees Ammit overpowering Khonshu. With bullets flying at Layla, Mark blacks out. Then, he suddenly wakes up holding unconscious Arthur, and around them are the bodies of Arthur's men. Confused, he asks if Steven did this. Steven denies, and Mark watches Layla, mortified, and can't explain what happened. Far away, they see Ammit pulling defeated Khonshu. Meanwhile, Layla tells Mark how to finish it. They grab Arthur and the broken cane pieces and return to the chamber of the Enneads. They place Arthur on a slab, and by using the chamber's energy, statues of the Ennead, and their own power, they begin an incantation. Energy flows into Arthur, pulling Ammit back toward the chamber. Speaking through Arthur, Ammit threatens they will never contain her. Khonshu tells Mark to finish it and kill Arthur and Ammit to be free. Realizing Khonshu sounds like Ammit, Mark lets go of Arthur. If Khonshu wants them dead, he must do it himself. Khonshu reluctantly leaves, releasing Mark and Steven. In a white void, Steven asks Dr. Arthur if this is reality. Arthur tells him no. He does not believe in Khonshu or Ammit. Mark disagrees, saying they believe in something different. Mark and Steven reject his analysis and decide to go save the world. Arthur notices bloody footprints, leaving him confused. After that, Mark wakes up in Steven's apartment. He calls for Steven, who responds and feels amazed that it worked. Mark struggles to process that Steven endured all of this destruction. Meanwhile, at the Putnam Psychiatric Hospital, a sedated Arthur on a wheelchair. An attendant signals bedtime, and suddenly, a man comes and takes Arthur down the hallway. Arthur notices collapsed bodies at the reception. He is placed in a long white limo, where he meets Khonshu in a formal white suit, laughing. Khonshu reveals he never wanted Layla as an avatar, and doesn't need another, knowing Mark is unaware of how troubled he truly is. Khonshu then introduces Arthur to Mark's third alter, Jake Lockley. Jake immediately shoots Arthur, and the limo then drives off into the unknown path.